I'm going to lay out every single tip that I learned that helped me during the times that I was taking the SAT. All right. So for some actionable steps on this, every single tip or every single thing that you see that's even remotely useful, I want you to make an implementation for it. And basically what that means is I want you to like think about, how am I going to use this today? What are the things I can do to either practice this or get good at this or use it today so that whatever my time constraint is, I can apply at least like one of these things in this video and see an improvement on my score, right? So hi, I'm Karthik. These are some last minute SAT reading tips. Let's get right into it. Okay. You should already have a general idea of what types of questions you find the hardest, right? And there are two general things that you can do. And first of all, the types of questions that you find the hardest, make sure that you actually figure that out through your old practices, right? So like what are those types of questions that generally like mess you up, right? What are the questions that you consistently get wrong? And it should be a certain type of question, right? You might get a certain number wrong, but what is like the common denominator question? What is that question that always shows up in that 5 wrong on reading for you? Let's say if you always get 5 wrong on every single SAT that you take. So what is that specific thing for you, right? And if you have at least a couple hours, what I want you to do is identify that hardest type in your head, right? Go to the SAT Suite Bank or the SAT Suite Question Bank. Just look that up on Google, or Khan Academy, right? And I want you to find the skill of the question that you missed, right? So what specific thing it is, go to the SAT Sweep Bank, go under the skills and search for the type of question that fits with the one that you like get wrong, the exact type, or go to Khan Academy and then go through their reading passages and just do like that one question, which is the type of one that you miss, and then just guess randomly for the others. You only care about that one question. And essentially, what you want to do is practice those types of questions exclusively as much as you possibly can, right? Use this strategy building method. In a previous video where I talk about my full reading strategy, go to that if you want to know more about it in detail and you actually have the time to do this. But a quick summary of it, right, is you want to figure out, if you get the question wrong, why did I get it wrong? Why is the correct answer correct and the wrong answer wrong? What specific key detail did I miss that makes the wrong answer wrong? And what specific key detail did I miss that makes the right answer right? And then practice those as much as you possibly can, right? Do that and run through that strategy again and again. And ultimately, what you should be finding after doing it a bunch of times is like, what is that specific thing that I can implement that's going to prevent me from making the same mistake? And that might just be reading with more detail, like looking at certain parts more carefully, remembering where in the passages that they talk about specific things by doing main ideas, right? It's just a matter of going through that scenario as many times as possible, right? If you have more than a couple hours and you're able to like get to 90% accuracy with the type of question, right? So you go through, let's say like 10 of them and you maybe get like 8 or 9 right. That's about 90% accuracy. The last 10% is incredibly difficult and it's not worth your time to just squeeze out when you can actually go to your second hardest skill and then do the same exact thing, right? You might not have you might only have time for one skill, or you might only have time to get 70 or 80% in one skill, right? But that is still a significant improvement, and you want to just drill in this strategy, and that's ultimately how you learn. We're just compressing how much you're actually doing. If you have less than a couple hours, what I want you to do is just take your hardest skill and realize that you're going to put that at the end, right? If you're taking it and you have the couple hours and you do the first strategy, whatever skill becomes now your new hardest skill, right? So you reach 90% with your hardest skill. So your second hardest skill is now officially considered your like hardest skill overall, right? What I want you to do with that new hardest skill, the second hardest skill overall, is skip that question, right? And leave it to the end. But, if you have like less than that amount of time, then what I want you to do is take that skill that you find your hardest, that you aren't able to practice a lot, and just skip it and come to the very end. But on top of that, attempt the easier versions of that skill first and then the harder ones, right? Even within the type of skill that you have, there's going to be easier questions and harder ones. Answer the easier ones first and rank them on your test so that you just generally know how hard or easy this might be, and skip them if you find one of those hard type ones to be extremely difficult and go to a new one. All right. The best reading strategy I find and that I have used to get a perfect score in the reading section, as well as a bunch of my students have used who have radically improved their score over the course of like a couple of weeks, right? And it's because they use this specific strategy, which I find to be amazing. It's the full read strategy. You fully read everything, and then what you do is every single paragraph that you read, you create a main idea, right? In your head, you summarize what just happened in that passage. And basically what that does is it allows you to just remember the main ideas and remember where every piece of information is. On the full read, you're probably not going to remember everything. It's almost impossible for you to remember everything just on the first full read, right? But that's what the main idea model is good for, because you're going to have to reference the passage again, like every time you answer a question that references a specific moment. So go back to that specific portion and try to figure out where exactly you're getting mistakes. It's too late to completely convert to this model, right? If you want to actually use this model, use it for December's SAT, right? Because you have 2 days until November. Here's what you should actually apply, right? Main idea summarizations. If you already do full reads of the passage before you answer the questions, apply the main idea summarization. That's something you can apply and instantly see something. It doesn't take that much time off, right? Maybe practice it once or twice if you have the chance to, but it's okay even if you don't. You can still apply it because it's not going to hurt you. It doesn't take that much extra effort. If you do skims first, when you eventually have to reference the passage again for a question, do deeper reads, right? Make sure you're really like going as deep as possible into that second read when you're going into the thing. And I wouldn't really do main idea things, but I would do like I prefer full reads overall at the very beginning because they allow me to get a really good idea of the entirety of the passage and the message. That's why I hate skimming beginning, right? But if you do skim first, that deep read on the second time around is so important. You're essentially doing the paragraph main idea first before the full read, right? The answer should always be explicitly clear, right? And that makes complete sense, but sometimes it's just not. Sometimes you're just unsure of what it is. But when you are unsure, you have to realize that it's because you're looking over a certain piece of evidence. There's something in the question that's stated that the evidence in the passage completely disproves, right? So 70% of the answer choice might be right, but that last 30% makes it wrong, right? Or an assumption that we don't technically know. And it's a very common mistake to actually pick the answer choice that might be lightly implied or reasonably assumed. But if all the other answer choices are terrible, then it might be the light implication answer choice, right? But almost 90% of the time, right? Almost 95% of the time, the answer choice is going to be explicitly clear. It's going to be explicitly clear what it is because it applies completely to the passage, right? And when it applies completely to the passage, that's when you know the answer is absolutely true, right? You read the specific evidence that the question is hinting at you to read, and then from that, you deduce that the answer has to be that one. It cannot be any other ones. Like one is just so blatantly obvious. And it's because you're missing the evidence, right? You need to focus on reading deeply. And I'll explain explicitly how you can instantly increase how you read deeper in one of the final tips in this passage. But basically, every single portion you need to read deeply and realize what it potentially could be referencing, right? Reanalyze the question and figure out what specific portions it's asking you to actually refer to, right? And then go to everywhere in the passage where it refers to that idea. Okay, instant tips, and I'm going to talk about that, how to read better strategy. So definition questions. You should never get these wrong again. Here's what you do. Don't read the answer choices, all right? Instead, what you're going to do is explicitly go look at the line number and look at the definition. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go to the passage instantly without looking at the answer choices, and then read above and below, find the context of a word, and then create a definition in your head, right? And you're going to apply, what is that definition? What word does it best apply to explicitly, right? What is that idea of the word and what does it apply to explicitly? That's how you get those questions right. It's not the other way around. So many people make that mistake doing it the other way around and get them wrong. If you get those types of questions wrong, apply this method. You're going to change it a lot. Practice it at least a couple of times if you have the opportunity to, at least once, right? Just try it at least once. Okay, how to read better instantly, right? What a lot of people underestimate is the power of mouthing words. I've already talked a bunch about the pen to paper strategy where you put your finger to every single word and then you just read it so you don't skip words or accidentally move over words. But mouthing words is so underestimated, right? Because when I explicitly read something, right, aloud, the amount of retention I get is just so much higher because I'm just reading it aloud forces me to be way more focused about the thing, right? Mouthing words, it might not have exactly the same effect, but it has a similar effect where it forces us to pay attention way more, right? If we're not just make sure when you're mouthing it, you're actually mouthing the words and you're not just murmuring or something, right? Make sure you're not making noise, but you're actually making the expressions and things that your mouth would actually do if you were saying it aloud. And that's the best way to emulate speaking aloud, to emulate reading better, right? Build your question order. I've already talked about skipping your hardest questions, but know your easiest, your medium, and your hard questions difficulties, and then know that every single one of those questions, right? So let's say your hardest question is the evidence pair questions, right? Where it talks about something, and the next question is like, what is the evidence for that question? Let's say that's your hardest thing. Within that, there's going to be easier examples and harder examples. So first, you're just going to answer all the easy and medium ones and leave the hardest ones to the end, right? And the very hardest ones, which should only be like one or two skills max. Even two skills is a bit of a stretch. One skill is the ideal amount, but honestly, that skill is itself going to have easy and hard versions, right? So read over them, figure out if it's an easy or hard one, and then skip it if it's too hard and go to the easier ones first, and then reference back the hard ones at the very end, right? And honestly, add your own personal preference. What is your personal preference to do? What is what you have been doing for all of your practice? That is honestly what you should emulate, because you're probably going to be better if you emulate that. Okay. Pick at least one thing. If you have at least an hour, pick one of these skills and like actually practice it, try it, implement it before your exam. If you have way longer, pick one of the more complex strategies that I've talked about to improve on, right? That is actually going to get you some reward from this video. Don't let this go to waste. Don't have wasted the last like 11 or 12 minutes just focusing on like these strategies but not applying them. Actually do something right now that's going to give you a noticeable increase from what your score would have been if you hadn't watched this video. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you learned something today.